Hello and welcome to the Low Tox Life podcast.
How dare I focus on the patient? We should be focusing on the disease, and that's where we go wrong as well. So there's got to be, though, at some stage, encouragement and not discouragement for health practitioners in either field to have a greater understanding of the role of the other person. And once that happens, then that focus then resettles on the patient.
Hey, I'm Alex, your host, and today I have Gerald Quigley on. He is a 50-plus year pharmacist, a 40-plus year herbalist, now a master herbalist, and with a wealth of information. While I originally had him on to talk about colds, flus, seasonal change and humidity and temperature changes and how they tend to actually make us more susceptible to various infections. Because of his wealth of knowledge, I grilled him on a few things that a lot of people talk about, get confused about, and how we can start to build a more trusted relationship with health professionals, how we can think about ourselves as customers who deserve great service, and how we can decode some of the things that come up in media, some of the things that we might worry about because we saw one Instagram reel. It's a great show that actually ended up being far broader than being just about immune support. So I hope you enjoy it. Can't wait to hear what you think. First, without our partners, we cannot do this show every single week for you. And they help you with your low tox swaps, of course. Most of them are Aussie offers, but I love that this month we have an international one as well, and then straight to the show. All of October, you have 15% off at Block Blue Light, and this is an international offer. Your code is LowToxLife, and you can head to blockbluelight.com. They help you keep blue light out of your evenings, keep you from experiencing computer blue light strain during the day, and have a bunch of lighting options, mask options for sleeping to keep that light junk out overnight and allow you to get deep rest, as well as super high quality red light panels, which the research shows us helps for tissue, joint, muscle, bone repair through to mitochondrial support, energy, inflammation, and even hair stimulation and skin support for things like eczema, acne, psoriasis, dermatitis, also rosacea. Enjoy that 15% off with code LowToxLife for October. It's an international offer. Let's head to the show. Gerald, hello. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for having me, and very much looking forward to our chat.
Oh, I am too. And now we're talking about cold and flu situations, but also the seasonal aspect of them, and how a lot of people sort of lure themselves into a false sense of security in the depths of a season like winter and think, oh, I got through the winter with nothing going on. And then spring is when statistically people tend to actually experience more infections. So can you talk us through how you come at illness through your career, both as a pharmacist and herbalist, and why you chose to kind of pad things out, so to speak, and then explain a little bit about what's going on when seasons and humidity changes and why that's more impactful.
We often use the phrase, don't we, Alex? I've caught a cold. Actually, it's the cold virus which has caught you. And we have to be prepared for the fact that these days we are being inundated with lots of viral matter, and we just have to be prepared for it. And I might add, a lot of that probably has been compromised adversely by COVID. I know we blame COVID for everything from climate change to the political climate, but there is no doubt that post-viral fatigue, post-viral infections, post-viral sensitivity is initiated by this ongoing challenge that we've probably, many of us, never recovered from COVID. So there are some basics, in my view, that are so simple we overlook. And one you've already referred to, and that's preparing for winter. So around Easter time, and depending on where you are in Australia, certainly in the southern states where we've got very changeable weather right across the southern states, it's a matter of starting to be sensible. So where we would be probably out in summer later at night and probably wearing less clothes than we normally would, in winter, obviously, like your mother used to say, if you're going to go outside, at least dress for the weather. get some sensible sleep, make sure you get sunshine when you can, manage your stress levels where you can, eat sensibly at all times. That's not something, it's where you can. You can easily do that if you really want to. So you
Oh,
keep
hold on. I don't really want to skim over that. Eat sensibly, which you can always do if you really want to.
that's fine.
Ouch,
Yeah,
Gerald.
I'm
Ouch.
sorry. Well, I attended a lecture from a fellow, an industry leader, who used the word inspiration all the way through his talk, that he was inspired as a kid by going into the office of this particular company that he ended up heading. So a worldwide known company. And I think it's time we learnt to be inspired by our own health. So if we are healthy most of the time, then we have to be inspired not only to manifest that to others and be proud of the fact that you are well. And if someone says, "What do you do?" remind them of the basics. And it happens all the time. I was at lunch the other day and a lady, and I seem to attract these people, which is fun. But over lunch, she said, "I know what you do. I take vitamin C and I don't seem to get a cold." And I was sitting opposite a GP who just about choked on his food. He said, "Oh, what a lot of rubbish." And she said, "Well, look, that may be the case in your opinion. I'm expressing mine and that of many friends, where I do take vitamin C every day in a capsule form. And in winter, I up that to 2. So that's 2,000 milligram this lady was taking. And she said, touch wood, I've been okay even through COVID for a number of years. Now, it may be coincidence. I don't care, but that adds more fuel to the positivity around taking some sort of responsibility for your own health. Now, it might be having chicken soup every day. It doesn't matter. If you've got something that actually makes you feel good about staying well, do it. Don't ever be dissuaded from moving away from it, because your health is in your hands. We've been too long basically relying on a health system, Alex, which is really an illness system. There's nothing healthy about our system at all. You can elect to get caught up in all that. And I still hear people that are told about issues like prostate health or dementia. When it becomes a real problem, then we'll start to intervene with some treatment.
Mm.
That to me is disrespectful. It's unprofessional. And we've got to weed out that sort of thinking completely and have that person say, no, with respect, I'm not prepared to do that. And if you can't help me in your usually medical practice, please refer me on, or I will find someone who actually shares what I want to do, what I think, and what I want to take care of. We've got to take more of that. We just, we're all human beings. We can't help everybody, but generally speaking, people like you and I'm lucky to do what I do, we do have an opinion, and
Mm.
we should be able to express that freely, and we've got the evidence to back it up. So someone that says, as this GP said, oh, there's no evidence. And the lady said to him, there is, there is. You're just not looking for it. Kabow.
Mm.
We actually changed topics. He knew he wasn't going to win the argument.
Yeah.
That was, I found that. So there is just a person who'd had some serious illness over her life. She was probably 63, 64. But I felt quite chuffed that here's someone saying, no, I'm sorry, I reject that no evidence business. This is what I do. So they're the basics. Now, if we don't have the basics in place, nothing's going to work. Really, it's just, that's the I want to lose 5 kilos before a wedding next weekend stuff. You can't do it. Our bodies aren't made for that. And remember, we're talking colds, and just going back on topic, everyone's got this paranoia about mucus. For goodness sake, mucus is good. Mucus is actually draining and flushing accumulated viral and bacterial matter and allergenic matter, particularly we've got plane trees now out in
Oh gosh, the bane of my poor son's existence.
so they're
Yeah.
everywhere at the moment.
Mm.
So we've learned we're now moving into congestion there, but our nose is actually trying to do a job. So the last thing, and this goes against all of the pharmaceutical advertising for years, soldier on and suck it up and take this to dry you up. We actually don't need to be dried up. We need to be encouraging that drainage and
Mm.
then putting other things in place. So we miss the elementaries. Probably no one's got time to listen. I dispute that. Become empowered, become inspired by your own health, and absolutely become feral about maintaining that.
I love that. Feral about maintaining your health, whatever that looks like for you. It's so good. And I think that empowerment piece is so important in a hyper externalized, I'm looking for the answers out there kind of climate, especially since the dawning of social media. But also coming back to what you were talking about before, where that woman pressed and said, no, this really does work. And there really is evidence.
Mm.
Remembering that to improve customer service, let's call health customer service, anyone who's a health professional,
Sure.
and to improve the level of customer service, you need to be actively dissatisfied.
Of course. You do.
Because that actually will just plant a few seeds here and there. Why did that patient leave? Oh, why did this
Mhm.
person not come back to see me? And in a quiet moment, that might actually get people thinking who work in health to expand knowledge and improve their customer service.
The other issue is, I think, the ability, Alex, to actually listen seems to have escaped. In a consultation these days, naturopathic consultations are different because we allocate the time. People pay for your time. But I think the medical system's been depersonalized so much because the almighty dollar rules that now you go for that quick consult and you don't really get much out of it at all because you're never actually, the person you're seeing never says, tell me how you feel.
Mm.
What an incredibly powerful question that is. I don't want to know what you've got. Tell me how you feel. Now, that has always been my opening remark on a naturopathic consultation. And often you can sit back for 15 minutes and just make the occasional note, but look at the person and listen. It's gone. And it's a common feedback I get from people, even they're going to see naturopaths, that most of the time they spend on their computer, which distances that patient. And they're paying for your time. So therefore, give them the time, give them the concentration, give them the focus. Write up the things after. I know it's a pain, and if that's all too costly, we'll charge more. No one's going to worry about that if you're giving value.
Mm. And then a lot of GPs are pressed in this system, kind of backed against the wall to get through that many consults. How do we fix that? Like, do you have any thoughts on that as someone in health for so many years?
I feel sorry for the role of the GP, which has traditionally been the caretaker of the family health.
Mm.
And I was lucky. I was brought up in the bush. And the local doctor and the local pharmacist and the local vet, they were the pillars of society.
Mm.
Oh, and the owner of the pub, he was pretty
Yeah.
well,
The famous four of a country town.
that's
Yeah.
where I did my training. That's where we met on. In those days, retail hours were sensible, so we would meet for an hour on a Friday night.
Mm.
And as a young budding learning pharmacist, I found this fascinating to hear what was going on in other practitioners' lives, and they all got on very well, which probably helped. And I was so fortunate to be able to see what was going on, and it's something that I've always embraced. For some reason or other, we've allowed health become silo mentality. And there is this fear that if we share our patient with someone else, they're going to leave us for good. I think I'm the reverse. I think that if you share the patient and you have a good relationship with that person to whom you are referring, you both will prosper and the patient will thank you forever, particularly if you solve their particular problem. Going back to the GPs, it used to be in the bush, if you were unwell, you went to the pharmacist. And the pharmacist said, I think I can help you. Or they would say, you are beyond my help. You've got that finger hanging off by a shred of skin. There's nothing I can do about that. I'm sorry, you're going to have to see the doctor or go to the local bush hospital.
Mm.
But these days now we seek an instant solution, and the GP is under pressure to give that instant solution. And they, I think, are being marginalised, which I find incredibly sad because they should be the central pillar to confidently refer to a naturopath or have a naturopath nearby. Suggest to they go and visit the pharmacy and get A, B, and C. And we should all be confident enough that if we agree with that, lovely. But what's happening is that probably people are finding the personalised service that they used to have is not there. It's very difficult to get into a GP. It's impossible to get into the emergency department of a hospital, and so the system is not coping at all. So that empowerment and that inspiration that I mentioned before is more important than ever. But you should have a relationship, and I encourage everybody to have a relationship with their local pharmacist, even as a sounding board.
Mm.
Sadly, you go in and you're inundated by offers of buy this, buy that, and 16 varieties, and this is on special, and you can never find anyone to help you. But that shouldn't matter. It shouldn't deter you. Walk up to someone and ask for some help. If you end up going to your doctor, it will sometimes, more often, you'll have to wait for a while to see them. But that doesn't mean you have to sit back and suffer. If it's going to take a few days to get your appointment, there could be something which could ease your discomfort. And look, it could be just something like, we were talking UTIs. How much water do you drink?
Mm.
And I know you don't feel 100%, and it doesn't really make sense, but you should be drinking much more water than you are now. Do you like cranberry? Go and buy some cranberry juice. At least do something about that UTI. But it's difficult now compared to when I was younger, and I hate using that phrase in the old days. But in those days, there was a hierarchy who had mutual respect, and that mutual respect was dear to them. And it meant that you could, if the pharmacist said, I can't help you, it was a genuine offer that he or she couldn't fulfill, and they would suggest then you could go off and see your GP. How GPs manage to see the number of people in a day that they have, I have no idea. I can't, and you're probably the same. You cannot reasonably see a person in under half an hour, a new person for an hour, and then you might spend another half hour writing up notes. Now, that's an hour and a half, which the public health system could never afford in a million years.
Mm.
If it did, you'd be paying heaps above the so-called common fee, which everybody, well, in the medical profession probably laughs at. So there are ongoing challenges which are not going to get better. They're going to get worse and worse and worse as all of us are living longer. We are not inspired to take care of our own health, so we're going to be
Yeah.
going
Well,
on
that's a
this.
big part, isn't it? Because we're also spending longer sick with the living longer in a lot of cases.
We have yet to understand, because we don't explain to people, that often one health condition can cause others to arise.
Mm.
And the classic might be a bit of arthritis. Now, the arthritis pathway seems to be you put up with it till the discomfort's no longer tolerable. You might be taking a supplement, and there are lots of evidence-based supplements that if you use early enough and in the correct extracts and form, with advice, will make a difference. But then often you'll end up on some sort of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. Out of that, you get free blood pressure and kidney damage. Out of that, you probably also get an ulcerated gut lining. So suddenly there's a drug for the blood pressure, a drug for the reflux. So there's 3 drugs straight away. And in the meantime, you're on that medical pathway that sadly it's very hard to get out of.
Mm.
Although there's a number of people now that are saying, I just want to stop and reassess. Where do I start? How do I start? Who can guide me? And that's where opportunities lie for that caring, trusted health practitioner.
Yeah, absolutely. And as someone with a foot in both camps of what we would say conventional and unconventional, or
My mates, Alex, say sitting on the fence and getting
sitting,
blisters in your backside.
which I'm sure it feels like sometimes, with the just the polarization of our current
Yeah,
time, where you have to pick a camp and dig your heels in,
like a
is
post office job.
it's very unproductive
Yes, it
for
is.
progressive health outcomes,
Yes.
because there's some great stuff happening in both camps.
Yes,
And
there is.
so can you talk to me about that vantage point and where you're seeing those opportunities lie to bring systems together rather than deciding which one's better than the other?
We'll never, ever, ever win an argument, either side, as to which one's better than the other. So there's
Mm.
got to be mutual respect. Now, that means, and thank goodness from a naturopathic perspective, most of the private health insurance rebates have been returned. So now those professions are being recognised as at least reputable and professional and completely evidence-based. I have friends of mine who are pharmacists stroke naturopaths, not many, pharmacists stroke nutritionists, very few, GPs stroke pharmacists, very few, but there are many that have combined careers, professional careers, and have worked very hard to attain those levels of skill. However, it takes dedication, and it really, there is no, from a medical perspective, there is no education on nutrition and complementary medicines given at all. From a pharmaceutical education, there's very little. And I was let loose for a little while, but I think I was a bit of a renegade because I was trying to actually focus on the patient. How dare I focus on the patient? I should be focusing on the disease. And therein, that's where we go wrong as well. So there's got to be, though, at some stage, encouragement and not discouragement for health practitioners in either field to have a greater understanding of the role of the other person. And once that happens, then that focus then resettles on the patient. In all of this, if we really want it to be brutal, the patient seems to be a damn nuisance. They're getting in the road of bureaucracy and getting in the road of professional satisfaction. And you've got to, we can't do anything about bureaucracy. They're here to stay. It's never going to change. In fact, it's growing every day. But we can do a lot about our own professional satisfaction. So we need to probably focus on do the job better. And it's enormously satisfying. There's no greater joy than for someone to say, come back and say, or even email and say, thank you because I now have my quality of life back. Very profound. And that's the inspiration that helps me, and it usually helps other people too.
Yeah. And I think this is for me where the patient's own sense of conviction around that not being a no and we now wait, like the example you just gave. Mum got that one with neuropathy, and I've been helping her in other ways because we're not just going to wait until it's something that's able to be given medication. That's insane. She's having symptoms now.
Yeah. And often, Alex, the medications don't offer much relief anyway because
Exactly.
at a dose where they do offer help, the particular person ends up being a zombie because the adverse effects are so bad. So great opportunities in chronic disease like that.
Yeah, huge. And I think the right GPs, I have a great GP who lets me bring research and we discuss it. And then he was really against long-term high-strength antifungals, but I had lived in water-damaged buildings on and off for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years by then. And I said, trust me, this is what a couple of doctors are doing in America with success. Look at the research, look at the papers. You could test my liver every week if that'll make you feel more comfortable with this, but I have to try something because I literally feel like I'm dying on a daily basis. And we did. And I think the right partner in your health, this is where it comes back to customer service, right? If you don't get great customer service, someone will be willing to give it to you and listen to you. So you keep auditioning people.
Yes, they will. And and a lot of people seem to now question the value of a medication where their quality of life is affected so badly. And it becomes a real ethical challenge for the patient because the patient will often say, I'm not going to take this. And that's a very strong, it's an unnecessary comment, but sometimes it's a bit of a wake up call to any of us that maybe we're not communicating the benefits all that well, and we're not getting the feedback by waiting to listen on how that person actually feels.
Yeah. Our major partner, AusClimate, is an Australian offer and they give you 10% off with the code LowToxLife all year round. A question I get asked often is, do I need a dehumidifier, an air filter, or both? And the thing to remember is an air purification helps reduce the toxic burden of your indoor air across all types of things, from pollens, dust mite, mold, VOCs from building materials. It reduces the level of toxins in your indoor air. Dehumidification reduces the moisture in your indoor air, helping you prevent the growth of mold and the contamination of your soft furnishings, clothes, and of course yourself. Because when it's over 60% humidity, mold is then given the perfect environment to grow, All it needs is dust particles or any kind of soft furnishing that it can grab onto, and it will literally start its job of multiplying and decomposing things. So dehumidification is for moisture control, reduction, and of course, therefore, the prevention of the growth of mold in your indoor environment. And air purification is for the overall reduction of toxic burden of a multitude of things for your indoor air. So hopefully that helps answer that question. A big thank you to Oz Climate for being our partner, and let's get into the show.
So it's a complex thing, and by the way, have we covered colds and flu?
Don't worry. I'm thinking, it's in my head, and I'm like, well, okay, I got to bring this back with an interesting segue.
We've solved so many problems. So we've gone from mucus to the healthcare.
Okay, Gerald, you brought us back. Let's talk mucus. So there's different types of mucus. There's different, and so if we reframe the meaning of it,
Yes.
if it started, what do we do? If we think, I've noticed my nose is a bit more blocked today. I've noticed maybe there's a little tickle. Can we first let's define the difference between a cold and a flu first, and then talk about first signs and what we do.
Those people who have had flu usually remember it. It's a bit like shingles. It's one of those diseases that and man flu, of course, is that's life threatening. That's a very that's usually solved by a comfortable couch, a channel changer that you can hold, and a little bell that you might call for some hot tea or coffee, but usually that won't happen. So we're talking here about the difference between something that's a viral infection, for which we have no option other than to treat the symptoms, but we've got to discourage keeping symptoms inside. We get the phlegm is doing its job, let's encourage it. Flu, on the other hand, involves usually our whole body. So we're getting aches and pains, we're getting absolute misery when we move, we can't sleep, we've got a temperature, we may have those other troubling things like nasal congestion, sinusitis, a lot of mucus on our chest. So there's lots of things going on there, and they invariably end up being a bacterial infection for which many people require an antibiotic. We've got this paranoia about coloured phlegm. Is it white? Is it yellow? Is it green? Whatever. That's just dead bacteria being expelled by the mucus. But you can assess your need for help by how you feel. The doctor will often say, go home, drink plenty, particularly warm fluids, and rest. And that doesn't mean doing emails all day. It means resting, which is, most of us hate the thought of resting, although we do all enjoy a holiday. But if we're in our own homes and if we've got active work, the concept of rest is a bit of a challenge. So that's really the difference. But in either case, a cold will usually come on more slowly, and then treat the symptoms. If you're looking at elementary supplementation, there are three. One is vitamin C, which we chatted about earlier, and that needs to be about 1,000 milligrams. The other is vitamin D, which is, most people don't understand that we're in a sunny country, but many of us have low levels of vitamin D. Our levels compared to around the country, around the world, are probably considered subclinical, and that needs to be addressed and probably will in future years. And the other great antiviral is zinc, which you don't take all the time unless you're crook. Zinc can upset copper levels, so you don't want to do that. But having 30 or 40 milligrams of zinc every day is a good potent antiviral. And normally over a few days, with some sleep and eating sensibly and some early nights, and stop reading the newspaper's front 4 or 5 pages and look at the sport at the back, you will get better. Flu, on the other hand, you can go from feeling a little bit uncomfortable in the morning to feeling like you've been run over by a bus at night, and that's your body saying, time to stop, we need some help here, let's get to bed, sleep, see how we feel in the morning, and take it from there. It's just listening to your body, just stepping back every now and again and thinking, how do I feel? Why do I feel like this? Do I need a few early nights? None of us like saying no, in case we have that FOMO, fear of missing out. You might, be there. I've got mates that say, you got to come along, because if you don't, we'll tear you apart, And I'm now at the age where I say, I'm not 100%. and I'm having an early night. So enjoy yourselves, but I won't be there. And these are other professionals in many regards. I find it funny, we were talking before. I have GP mates that do take complementary medicines, but I'm sworn to secrecy and not allowed to tell their other friends.
Oh, really? Ah, gosh. And this is, we wonder why we end up where we end up when people don't feel like they can actually celebrate something that the other side's
Yeah,
doing.
one who
Yeah.
says glucosamine and turmeric help him play golf,
Mm.
and the other he suggests St John's Wort particular extract to his patients who have some issues, and he sees better results than a lot of the other drugs that are prescribed.
Oh, around mental
Anxiety,
health and
depression.
anxiety. Yeah, yeah. It's an incredible herb.
But he
And
said,
on the top, sorry.
don't tell anybody, he said. This
Wow. And yeah. Mm.
that's life.
Okay.
Take a deep breath, Alex. This is
Well,
the world in
do
which
you
you
know,
live.
I have naturopath friends who feel like they can't talk about some of the benefits their clients are having around ADHD medication because it's a pharmaceutical, or, like, and I feel like if we could actually just celebrate whatever works for the person to give them a better quality of life and feel great, then how is it bad?
We should be able to have open and honest discussions. But
Yeah.
sadly, an opinion about ADHD or autism um, precipitates a pile on from all the experts who say you can't say that, even
Mm.
though you may observe changes in a number of children that you're suggesting. And these aren't, we're not, none of us are prescribing powerful herbs and powerful drugs here. These are usually gentle, brain modifying, as in nutritionally supporting options that overseas are used commonly, and here we can't talk about them.
Mm.
So it's a struggle. It really is. Anyway, if we focus on the patient, things have to improve.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. Okay. And so you mentioned there zinc. See how I'm bringing us back? Zinc, D, and
It immediately
C.
does that, yes. They're the basics.
um,
They're the basics, I think, that we could almost consider these days. You could certainly take all year round. D, I think you could take all year round, and zinc when needed. So
mm.
they're my three go-to.
And we hear DK. K has to be taken for the D and the K to work together to
A
get
lot
the
of
mineral
confusion about the
to
K.
go.
So vitamin K plays a role in calcium.
Mm.
So what's happened, and I was lucky enough 15 years ago to attend the International Garlic Symposium in a very swanky hotel outside Los Angeles.
Wow.
And that was
Okay.
a week of lectures from people using aged garlic extract.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one fellow who, now this is, maybe it was 25 years ago, goodness me. It was a great week. And the lectures went all day. Lunch was brought in a 5-minute break, and you ate while you listened to half-hour lectures, people flown in from all over the world. The thing that resonated with me then was the fact that people were being observed with high levels of coronary artery calcium. And that was being attributed by this cardiologist to the fact that calcium supplements were being added to, or vitamin D3 was being added to calcium supplements because the D3 helps the absorption. Back then, it was a challenge that he said, I don't know what we're going to do because this is happening. Now
Mm.
we know that vitamin K2 actually plays a role in directing calcium into bones and away from blood vessels. Now that has got all the clinical evidence needed, and many cardiologists are very strong on that.
Mm-hmm.
So now most of we progressives are saying if you're going to be taking a calcium supplement, if you need a calcium supplement, it should be one which is accompanied by D3 and K2.
Mm.
So
Okay.
that's where the K2, it's really cardioprotective, but it cardioprotective in that particular way.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. So it's not necessarily for people who are only taking D, but if they're taking mineral supplements like a calcium, that's when the K is essential to bring on board. Have I got that right?
Yes, you have. Well, remember now, Alex, that osteoporosis is an industry. And it's an industry that's so exciting. We even make up terms. We now call a disease called osteopenia, which is not a
Yes.
disease at all. It is merely a term attached to an increased risk for osteoporosis. I get emails from people saying, I have been diagnosed as suffering from osteopenia. And I say, that's pretty clever because it's not a disease. It's just It's just what it means, and hopefully you have been given advice on how you reduce the risk of that issue progressing to osteoporosis. In most cases, they're not. What an opportunity for other health practitioners to step in and guide on calcium in food, which is the best way to have calcium, and weight-bearing exercise and sunshine and all those things. But we want an instant solution straight away.
So true. I mean, I can't think of something more powerful that I've done for my health in the last 2 decades than starting to lift heavy things.
Weight-bearing exercise.
Yeah.
Now, we blokes used to take care of that by saying, no, that's too heavy for you. I'll lift it. We now have to step back and say, how about we both lift it together? It's actually good for all of us.
Yeah.
I'm surprised how many women in mature age tell me that they're lifting weights at home.
Yeah, my mum started going to circuit classes.
Yes. Well,
She's 78, and I'm like, yes.
It's not very
So
ladylike
good.
to be lifting weights at home because you might perspire, but it's so good for your bones.
So good for your bones. I broke my foot 2.5 years ago now. Before,
Yeah.
dog sees the rat before I do, and I go over on the lead. Now, dog has seen rat before I did twice in the last month, and I literally splattered. You can see my Band-Aid. I've got a massive scrape on my hand, but dusted myself off and kept going. No issues. It's like muscle makes you a cushy, bouncy. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I wouldn't have believed the power had I not experienced it myself.
And that's total body strength, which is the unexpected fall changes lives.
It does. Yeah. So how do we segue back to infections? Okay.
What about just before? Let's look at a herb that because this is what I do.
Yeah. So that was going to be my question. Thank you, because I wanted to say DC zinc, great.
Yes.
And in the world of herbs, what do we focus on there?
Well, you walk into any outlet these days and you'll be inundated with herbal options. The evidence base clearly says that echinacea is amazing. And remember, these days, the more exotic the herb from the southern slopes of the South American Andes, grown by people who've been there for 5,000 years and therefore costs 10 times as much, is even probably the highlight in the social media area. But basically, there are extracts of echinacea which have been shown to make a real difference in reducing the risk of viral infections. Now, every now and again, we hear, oh, you can't be taking this all the time because it will reduce its effectiveness if and when needed. I dispute that. I think if you are the sort of person who suffers from upper respiratory tract infections, which is what we're talking about today, having good quality as recommended by your trusted health practitioner. And you can also always ask, where's it from? Is it grown overseas in a backyard paddock? Where's it from? Just give me a bit more information. That is my go-to.
Yeah, brilliant.
And it was particularly good during those viral infections of years ago. Now, there are others that are more specific, like astragalus and other things, but you don't have to guess this for yourself. You see someone who is trained. You see a naturopath, you see a herbalist, you see a nutritionist, whoever you get on well with, who actually will give you the time and to listen, who will then customize your particular immune support across winter and reassess it often.
And they'll be able to check in on contraindications with anything else you're doing.
Of course.
Yeah.
But I do think, in saying that, that's a good point. I do think this issue of the dangers of mixing conventional medicine and herbal medicine, I'm sorry, I reckon that's a beat-up. I've been a pharmacist 55 years, herbal medicine specialist for probably 42 or 43. I could count on one hand. Maybe issues where an interaction has caused a problem. And one was a classic. One was a fellow who came to me and he said, I'm really worried because my new anticoagulant medication, I go out to lunch and then I go to my GP for my blood test, and I do that each 2 weeks. But funnily, it's after lunch. And I said, oh, really? And what do you have for lunch every day? He said, I have garlic prawns laced with so much garlic, it's frightening. Guess what? He was going along, and obviously that particular type of garlic was altering his INR readings a little to cause concern. So all we did was he went to the GP before he had his blood test. Everything was fine.
Wow.
Just by asking, what do you do?
So, can I workshop something with you there? Because I have a family member who's been on long term blood pressure medication, and she was told to cut back on the magnesium because it was affecting the blood pressure medication. There's plenty of research to suggest magnesium is really supportive of healthy blood pressure levels.
It is.
So, wouldn't the better thing to do be to reduce the dose of the pharmaceutical in that case?
Oh, well, that's a challenge within that silo. That's the problem.
Mm.
Why is she taking the magnesium while we're workshopping? Is she cramping at night?
Oh, she was taking it because, let me just remember, because it was a couple of years ago.
Yep.
It was pain after breaking her hip,
Mhm.
and she wanted to take it as a muscle sort of relaxant
Well,
as she was doing the rehab.
okay. Now, there's a couple of options. It could be a win-win. One might be that she reduces the dose of the magnesium.
Mm.
One might also be to have a blood test for to check the actual level of magnesium. But as we've seen with B6, that can introduce hysteria.
Mm.
So there's a few other options. If she lowered the dose and her blood levels were within the expected levels, then she should get the same level of relief from muscular pain that she was getting before. There isn't. Now, see, what we should be doing is saying to the GP, can you explain why? You say it interferes. Where can I go to actually learn more about that potential interference?
Ooh, great question from a patient. Love that.
That will either set up a barrier to end communication completely, but more usually will say, I'll just speak to my staff out the front and I'll find that for you and send it off. But
Mm.
follow it up. Just ask
Yeah.
why. So the person that says you can't do this, there's no harm, no respect by just saying why.
Mm. And can we talk about the B6 issue, given it's been all over the news this year?
The B6 issue, and I don't have the exact details of how all this started, but
Mm.
I gather a person went in and inadvertently bought a high dose B6, thinking it was something else, and took it 3 times a day. So that's 750 milligram of B6 a day, which is
Geez.
unbelievably high.
That's a
Yeah,
huge amount, yeah.
yes, I know.
And it would have been the synthetic form, I'm assuming, the
Yes.
pyridoxine, yeah.
And now these facts may be wrong. This is from what I read, but interestingly, the arguments have gone quiet. So maybe the hysteria has settled down a little. We know that higher levels of B6 can initiate neuropathic pain, tingling, burning in certain people
Mm.
who don't synthesize the B6 as well because it's not real B6.
Mm.
Now, if this means that we reassess the levels of B6 in many of the other products, because it's often added to magnesium, because the evidence shows if you add B6 to magnesium, the magnesium gives you a better outcome.
Mm.
And there are a number of companies now who are telling me they will be reformulating to either remove or reduce tremendously B6. I get emails from what I do, I get emails from all around the country, and I get emails from people who say they've got B6 toxicity. And I say to them, can you list for me the things you take containing B6? And every now and again I get feedback saying, well, nothing. And I say, well, you can't have B6 toxicity. It's neuropathic pain, obviously. It's nerve pain. It's not caused by B6. Because if you eat an apple, you're going to have some B6. B6 is naturally occurring in food, and that's okay. But if you're not taking a supplement which will lift your levels, it can't be B6 indicated. So we had this massive hysterical response by anybody. It played into the hands of those who denigrate complementary medicines. It's given them some beautiful
Plenty of ammo,
information.
yeah.
But I can reach behind me and I can reach behind me the Australian Medicines Handbook, which I have to buy every year for $350 to practice. And I'm happy to send you last year's copy if you want, because it doesn't change
Sure,
much.
I'll take it.
We add more and more and more drugs. That's all we do. When you
Mm.
look at paracetamol, which is on television for everything from losing your hair to hemorrhoids and whatever.
A
Take
crying
paracetamol,
baby. Yep.
whatever. When you look up, and each drug is given, there's a little couple of sentences, mode of action.
Mm-hmm.
Mode of action of paracetamol, unknown.
Hmm.
Paracetamol would not get registration today because we don't know how it works. But it's been grandfathered into time. Now, that always concerns me because paracetamol toxicity is an enormous problem. And if you look at
I
you look at coronial inquiries on people that have died of liver failure, and invariably it's high dose paracetamol that's been involved. Now, we don't read that and I'm not talking just a dozen people. I'm talking hundreds of people each year
yeah.
across Australia. We don't see that with B6. We see some discomfort, and it's been identified in certain people in certain instances. Paracetamol, and I'm not having a crack at paracetamol because it's useful in reducing temperature. It is
Yeah.
useless, though, for arthritic pain, but it's prescribed for arthritic pain and advertised for arthritic pain all the time when other options like turmeric and devil's claw, hyperglyphitum, all these things have got much more evidence of better use. So we've got to make sure that we get things in perspective. And I'm not saying that B6 is completely clear. If this is going to refocus us on proper supplementation and healthy supplementation, terrific, because we've got to make sure that what we're recommending to people is perfect as much as we can, even though every day people are prescribed heavy medications and they have massive adverse reactions, and we just say that's all right, leave it for a couple of days, we'll prescribe something else.
Mm.
We don't allow complementary medicines that luxury. We just say this extract of X, which happened to have been brought in from some outback country in the world, has caused liver toxicity. Therefore, all products in Australia containing that stuff, Comfrey is an example.
Mm.
Then it's banning it. We're taking it off the market.
Wow. Can you talk? Because I know my audience are nerds, bona fide
Oh, join.
nerds, and and they're going to hear Comfrey skirted like around, and then I'm like, no, we need to actually explain what happened there, just for the people who are interested.
Comfrey is a herb for bruising. A bit like a comfrey ointment would probably replicate what things like deep heat and those things are advertised these days, except it's not heat. So comfrey works like arnica. It helps bruising and bleeding and swelling and is amazing,
Mm.
absolutely amazing. However, and it used to be available as a comfrey tea and a comfrey capsule. Based on some issues in the US where there was some poor quality comfrey on the market, which caused some issues. Pretty well, it's been taken off the market completely, certainly in Australia. And I get concerns that you can buy comfrey ointment still from certain places. And then when friends of people who are using comfrey see comfrey, they say, oh, you can't use that, it's poisonous. Well, of course,
Mm.
it's not because you're rubbing it on the skin. It's no problem at all, just acts locally. And there are lots of instances like that. Now, we've grown up with products like this. Well, my generation has. You're too young to remember, but your folks would remember things like comfrey, gentian violet, acroflavine. Anyway, we've learned a lot about wound dressings and those things, but and wound recovery. But it didn't hurt us, but
Mm.
the evidence is not there apparently. So those things disappear. That's okay. It's looking after us. It's looking after the consumer, which is very important. But we've got to be careful we don't go overboard in stopping sensible things that actually play a role in just the person's general quality of life at home.
Yeah. And so, given you're a pharmacist, naturopath, herbalist, given you've been doing it for that long, and you're a lucky white bloke, because that's handy
Mm.
when you want to have more important
No, from my wife.
conversations.
Okay.
Sorry to point it out, but it's true. That's the world we live in. Do you have conversations ever with political representatives or people who are heads of different types of associations in health to try and solve for these shortcomings?
I wish I could do a lot more. I'm so focused on helping individual people, and I've done a lot of that in the past. And and there are people that have been really bruised. A classic is a bloke like Professor Ian Bridehope. Now, Ian revolutionised. He's Melbourne based. was head of the College of Nutritional Environmental Medicine at some stage. He was a pioneer in trying to integrate medical practice, because he's a medical doctor, with complementary medicines, particularly in his work with vitamin C. And people like Marcus Blackmore, who I know very well, these blokes have got contacts at the highest political level. But politicians pushing particular things, and I work in the medicinal cannabis space, in the autism field, and so I do every now and again speak with politicians. They don't understand. If a politician has a relative or family member with that particular problem, it becomes more personal, and they will tend to pursue it a little more aggressively. If they only hear of issues, or they have a deputation of constituents who come to talk about it, they'll normally listen over their 10 minutes and delegate that to one of the staff and kick it down the road, and nothing will happen. So they do. I'm not sure. If we've now got some health practitioners in Parliament who are voicing opinions on various things, but it's all about lobbying these days, and that's really not what politics should be about. But that's what happens. So the pharmacist that's in federal Parliament, or maybe she's in Queensland State Parliament, you can imagine how many times she's contacted from interested parties with vested interests to make sure a particular opinion is given. We need to just refocus on the patient. What's better? Because if it's affecting one person, it's probably affecting thousands of people. And we can't solve everything, but we can solve many things. So there's got to be some order. I think there's got to be accountability in advertising. I get very annoyed when I read. I do a lot of work in the dementia space. I get very annoyed when I read in the paper about a new drug that's going to do this and do that, and it's going to take 10 to 15 years. That is political. That's not news. That's political lobbying from a media department. I read the other day where, with the tariffs that are coming in that Donald Trump has introduced, Big Pharma in the US has set aside $750 billion to build their own industry so they don't have to rely on importing drugs from other countries. Now that's chicken feed. That's the Australian economy 20 times over. Elbow, come on. So there are forces out there which are trying to manipulate our health, and we saw that during the viral outbreaks of a few years ago. And we've just got to expect more accountability, because they're dealing with people, and they're dealing often with gullible people, and they're dealing with a very uninformed media group. Journalists who are journalists are pretty thin on the ground these days. They're reporters, but they're not journalists. The reporters actually should be reporting, but they're now giving opinions, which are usually uninformed and no evidence base. It's a personal opinion. And we've just got to dismiss that as being irrelevant, but they're getting all the airtime.
I founded Low Tox Life in 2009, and as the community grew, I started to identify areas that people needed structured learning. And that is when the first e-course, Go Low Tox, was born in 2014. Since then, I've worked with scientists and health professionals to bring you low-cost courses to help you shortcut your goals with whatever you're challenged by right now. So whether you're new to going low tox and you'd love a framework and some really helpful suggestions across 22 different topics covering everyday life, or maybe you're working on an inflammation picture and you just want some help to calm the farm, whether you're on a fertility journey, either having trouble or wanting to optimize, we literally have courses for these and more. Head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the course tab, and enjoy. Yeah. And do you think if people do want good journalism, what do you recommend that we should be focused on? Like even, publications that are good or anything in that space?
From a public perspective, or from a, well, look, I think
from public, because I think public health takes the privilege of, I've got tons of choices and I'm going to do it privately, and the public health is where we make the biggest difference.
This is where building a relationship with your trusted health practitioner makes a difference. Now, he or she will not be right all the time, but they will give you the time to discuss something of concern. I get a lot of that. I've seen on social media I gather, my friends tell me, the lady who packs my groceries says this is the best. Now that's terrific, but it initiates a discussion, and it's the discussion focused on your particular issues, which is most important. Now we've got to encourage that, reignite it, but it's a big responsibility for all of it, we health practitioners, to make ourselves available and to be informed. And we won't be right all the time. We all have our biases and our views. Goodness me, you've just listened to me for an hour. But we've got to absolutely focus on that person who is expecting us to help them. And if we can't, we're in the wrong job.
And as the person, we have to remember we deserve great customer experience for our health.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's why you will go to particular restaurants to eat. You won't go to others because it only takes one. And we have to treat every single person. I've been doing radio for 25 years with a fellow who you might know, Ernie Sigley. Now,
yeah, of course.
Oh, come on. You're not old enough to remember Ernie Sigley.
No, I'm 49. Yeah, I remember Ernie.
Ernie and I used to do a session in Melbourne. He was always very excited, and that was 25 years ago. Quigley on Sigley, he called it.
Oh, wow.
And I remember he thought that was pretty clever, that little giggle he'd have. And the first session I did with him, he said as we walked into the studio, he put his arm around me and he said, "No, Gerald, I want you to approach today as your last show." And I said, what do you mean? Because I thought we'd both agreed this would be ongoing each week. He said, if you approach it as your last show, you will have a different opinion completely as if you're here just for a half hour. In fact, it was an hour in those days. And I've never forgotten that. And I regard any discussion, response to an email, face-to-face, media work radio session as potentially my last show and my last patient if I don't do it properly.
Well, I very much appreciate that approach. Good on Ernie for instilling that in you. I certainly feel that way myself when I communicate, and I can't wait to talk to you about men's health. Thank you so much for this cold and flu-ish, but let's try and solve all the problems in health kind of discussion. Thanks, Gerald. Thank you for joining us in listening to this week's show. If you're not already subscribed or following the show on whatever platform you listened, please do that now. It helps enormously in terms of getting this show out to more people. Another way you can connect and support the work we do so that we can support you in your low tox life is join us in the Low Tox Club. You'll get access to amazing member masterclasses where we invite some of our best show guests for a live Q&A with members. You also have great shopping discounts from low tox businesses and honestly, the nicest low tox community Facebook group that exists on the internet. I do hope you join us there. It costs just the price of a coffee a month on average. Head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the Explore tab, and Low Tox Club is the first option there. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.